I want to get your take on the tax bill. The Senate is expected to have that out on Thursday in terms of beginning markup. Here's what Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had to say about the GOP plan. Listen to this.
Hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have a Senate version of tax reform out and on to the floor ready to be considered the week after Thanksgiving.
The closer this bill gets to becoming law, the greater the threat it poses to Republican majorities in the House and Senate. People who will get hit hardest are the middle class.
And the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Utah Senator Orrin Hatch, admitted yesterday that the legislation cannot pass the chamber as currently constructed because it does not fit within the Byrd rule parameters. Senator, how are you going to get tax reform passed by the end of the year? And how do you push back on those who believe you are raising taxes on a portion of the people in order to pay for a 20% corporate rate?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it will meet the Byrd rule or we won't get anything done. And we will have this out of committee this week. And then there's a week off for Thanksgiving. And then the next week it'll be through the United States Senate. And so it should be easy to get out of conference and get to the president by Christmas. So to answer your question about the middle class, this is a middle income tax cut for that class of people, and it ought to be because they're the people that have lost out in recent years, both because of lack of economic growth and not the job creation we should have. And it's going to, and that same class of people is going to benefit when you cut the corporate tax rate, because at least 25% of the taxes that corporations pay will go back into the pockets of about $4,000 a year average for those workers. So both from a tax cut and from an increase in wages, this is very much a middle income tax cut. And I don't think you meant to say that we're going to cut individual income tax to take care of the corporate tax rate, because there's going to be a corporate tax rate cut and there's going to be a middle income tax cut as well. And the distribution between high income and low income people is going to be maintained about the same as it is now. So Schumer worried about wealthy not paying their fair share. Presently, the top 1% pays 40% of the income tax. And when this is passed, that top 1% is still going to pay 40% of the income tax coming into the federal treasury.
Yeah, I mean, I would broaden it out and say that the top 10% of earners pay 70% of the tax. Isn't that right, Senator?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so if you've got the top 10% paying 70% of the tax, are they getting a tax cut, or are you raising taxes on that group and actually cutting taxes on those who don't pay any taxes?
Yeah, if you look at the distribution tables that were put out by the Finance Committee, you would see that across the board, Americans are getting a tax cut.
Across the board, Senator? Across the board?
Across the board, but an average of about $1,500.
I don't think that's true, Senator. When you're removing a deduction, there are several states that will see tax increases, with all due respect. I don't think it's an across-the-board tax cut.
If this is your point, that there's 132 million taxpayers, and I can guarantee you every one of them is getting a tax cut. No, I can't tell you how this is going to, or nobody else can tell you how this is going to apply to every one of those 132 million taxpayers.
Right. Well, there's a reason that Congressman Peter King is a no on this, right? There's a reason why the representatives from the high tax states are saying, my constituents are getting a hit. They're going to pay higher taxes. So my question to you is, how do you push back on those people who say it's not a tax cut at all across the board?
It's pretty darn easy from this standpoint, that when you have the deductibility of those taxes, and those legislatures and city councils in those states have high property tax, high income tax, high sales tax, then it adds up to maybe the people in the other 45 states subsidizing those states and the way that their politicians want to run up the tax bill.
So you think over time this is going to impact those high state governors, those high state mayors, to change their policies, to lower their taxes on a state level?
Listen, in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, you have all the high-income people moving to Florida,
right,
with lower taxes. You can't allow that wealth to go out of your state and to create jobs. They ought to encourage capital to stay within their states and have that capital create jobs.
Do you worry that delaying the corporate tax rate of 20% by a year is only going to delay growth getting started, Senator? Why would CEOs invest in their business, make plans to hire more people if they're actually not going to get a tax cut to 20% until 19?
Absolutely, it's going to work, and it's going to work right away in 2018 because of the full expensing of all depreciable purchases that they make and investments they make. That's going to overcome the full expensing for corporations as well as small business, so that that's what's going to jack up the economy, and it's going to vastly overcome that delay of 1 year you're talking about.
Now, the president, on the individual side, the president tweeted yesterday saying something like, you know, drop the highest rate to 35%. Are you considering that?
I think that it will not go down to 35. Now, I think it should, but I don't think that we'll have the distribution tables work out the way we want to be fair to all taxpayers. So I think 38.5 is the best we can do. But the reason I support 35 and why I think it's legitimate, because when I was chairman of the committee in 2001, we did reduce it from 39.6 down to 35 because we wanted parity with the corporate tax rate, so that individual small businesses that file their
right,
individual forms would be on the same level as C corporations.
So why can't you do it now? Why can't you do it now?
Then you'd have to reduce it down to 20 if you want that same parity. But we're making up for that by a special tax deduction for small business income that would make up the difference.
All right, we will leave it there. Senator, good to see you, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Senator Chuck Grassley joining us.